Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. And I got to tell you, folks, I might have mentioned this to you guys earlier this year. I have signed a contract. I'll be putting out a book, I'm hoping right after the beginning of the new year, where I'll be doing kind of a retrospect of all of the strange and anomalous things that have happened to me throughout my life, and all of the cool paranormal encounters I've had, just high strangeness, weird moments my family has shared with me, things that have, kind of been all and around. Now, this won't really go into items that have happened when I've been on Ghost Adventures or Paranormal Challenge, or even on Holzer Files. I'll probably keep that for a second book that'll be all about the weird TV show paranormal stuff. But I've got enough, I think, to load up a full book here, and that's working with the Into the Fray group and publishing house, and they've got a lot of great authors coming out. And you'll be hearing quite a few of them on our show. As a matter of fact, last week's show, Steve Stockton joined us. His books are being released and put out through Into the Fray. I believe in a week or two, we're going to be joined by June Anderson talking about the ghosts of the Emerald Isle, haunted Ireland, and all the great, weird, crazy stories over there. She's a new author with them. And joining us today, we've got a great author, an interesting book. The new book is out and available, I believe, June 12th, 2020. So it is out and available right now. Punk Rock and UFOs, Stranger Than Fiction. This is his third book, nonfiction book, examining these concepts. And joining us is Mike Damante. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I've never been on the show before. I know you guys have a tremendous audience, so I really appreciate the opportunity. And also, welcome to the Beyond the Fray publishing family. They've accumulated a nice little roster, so welcome to the family.
Well, it's great to be a part of it. It's our own little paranormal mob family we've slowly built up here.
Yeah, I was talking to Ryan Sprague when he first told me he was signed on too, and I said to him, I was like, man, this is like the Cash Money Records of paranormal right now.
That's right. Getting them all together. And Ryan should be joining us in a few weeks as well. We've got that in the works. But let's dive into this and introduce yourself to us for our audience. Mike, you've got a really impressive background and pedigree. Talk to us a little bit about where you've come from and where your fascination in the field of kind of the strange and anomalous began.
Thank you. So first off, I got my background in journalism. I have a journalism background before I was an author. I worked for about 6 to 7 years at Houston Chronicle, Hearst Media. I did writing, reporting, web producing. I covered concerts. I would interview bands. I would cover sports. I would do some news stories here and there. And I work on the copy desk, editing stories and working on the website. So that's my journalism background for sure. After I left journalism, I began teaching. I teach journalism, English, creative writing. And I wrote my first book probably, I would say, I'm really bad with remembering years, but probably after a couple years after I had my first sighting. I've always been interested in kind of, the weird and paranormal and UFOs as a kid. But then I had my first sighting when I witnessed the traditional colored orbs moving in crazy ways. That was my first sighting. So once I had that sighting, then it was kind of like my interest reignited again, into the subject. Like I never stopped being interested, but I took a deeper dive into it and a deeper look. And the next thing you know, I was writing books about it. And then I said, you know what, books are cool, but I don't know if I'm ever going to write another book. So let me continue research on my website. So I started punkrockandufos.com.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that first sight. Kind of set the stage for us. Where were you? What time of night? And how all did this go down?
So, yeah, I was driving home from work. I was driving home from downtown. I just left my shift at the Chronicle. It was probably about maybe 11 o'clock, midnight, around that time. And I was driving, it wasn't like I was in the outskirts. It was, right smack in the middle of the city is where I was, where there was, if you, off to the highway, there's car dealerships, there's commerce, there's, parking garages, there's stuff. It wasn't like it was in the middle of nowhere. and I kind of just saw in the sky this green orb that was moving in these really crazy and deliberate ways. It looked controlled. It was fast. It was intelligently controlled. And the next thing you know, it just shot up and disappeared. And I remember going home, updating my Facebook about it, and a bunch of people said that they saw it too. So I was like, okay, cool. I wasn't seeing things. So that was definitely, nice confirmation.
Okay. So you go from just being one lone nut to a part of a great party of crazies, right, that have all seen this. And I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but I mean, is that a relief to you that, boy, this wasn't just maybe I was misinterpreting? Other people saw this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always believed, even before that, because like I said, I've been interested in this stuff, since I was a kid, and I was never afraid to say, yeah, I believe in UFOs. I believe in Bigfoot. Like, I was never afraid to kind of argue that point. But when you actually see something yourself, it's pretty cool. And I think especially when you read some other people's sightings and you hear their reports, and it's like, man, I wish I saw that too. Because it's really common. Like, people don't understand. Like, when you bring this subject to mass audiences who aren't, used to reading this stuff like we are, you'd be surprised how many people have seen something or are open-minded to it. And I like to bring up this example. So I teach, and a couple years ago, actually we've done this year too, we were able to teach our colleagues for one day any subject we wanted. It was like for, the kids weren't in school, we were just doing it. So I did like a UFO one. And you'd be surprised how many people came forward. Man, I saw this. I've seen something before. Like, they all had their stories. And one of them even came to me afterwards and claimed she had like an abduction story. So it's pretty crazy how common that these sightings really are.
I love the moments out when I'm somewhere and they find out what I do and my fascinations, and their responses are, that's a load of crap. I don't know how you guys can do that. Those TV shows on all these ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs are so stupid. But, when I was 12 years old, and then they launch into some story of their own, and you're like, wow, you just summarily dismissed everything, but yet you've had your own experience. It is so weird how it seems to touch so many different people in different ways, and people that may not have even thought about what their experience was as anomalous at the point, but yet it made no sense in the real world. That's part of what fascinates me about the stories that people share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those, I think I was reading in a book the other day, I think it's considered like societal evidence. Obviously, we don't have hard, quote unquote, hard evidence. But yeah, the thing to me that stands out is that these stories have maintained their accuracy and their consistency all throughout time, and it's been cross-cultural. And if you even go back before people even had the opportunity to share with each other what they were experiencing, before they could even mail each other a letter or email or had any mass communication, these stories existed. So, there's obviously something there.
Yeah, the concept that so many people experience it, but in some instances they experience it the same exact way at different times, which is also another interesting aspect of this, right? Because we can all be on different corners and see an accident and have all seen and experienced it completely differently. We think the other person did it. We had a different vantage point, a different kind of slant that we bring to it. Yet people that go to haunted locations or hot spots for paranormal phenomena, they seem to experience it very much in the exact same way as other people. Do you find that kind of unusual and strange?
It's weird because, like, I think the people with less cultural references see it like the traditional person would. Oh, I saw something in the sky, I didn't know what it was. And this is something I cover in this book too. I quote a couple of folklorists and scholars that, sometimes when you see something that is more accustomed to your culture, you automatically assign something to it. So if, like, you've never seen or never heard of an alien, right, and you have an abduction experience, you may think it's a demon or a monster or whatever else, what other folklores or religious text or mythology you have to go off of. So to me, it's always that's pretty fascinating that people have these same experiences, and a different group of people will view it as a paranormal weird experience, unexplained, and another group of people will say, "Oh no, I know. I think I know what this is."
Well, let's dip a little deeper in. Now, you had a chance to talk to a lot of musicians and interview them, and I had a chance to listen to Sammy Hagar's book, Red. And he, oh man, I dated this girl and I wrote this song and I played with Van Halen, and then my dad's ghost came to visit me, and then I went for a drive, and then I ate this taco, and then I saw UFOs and believe I was abducted. And then, it's just so matter of fact through his book of strange phenomena. And John Lennon seeing UFOs, Bowie, so many different celebrities having strange supernatural encounters. Did they ever come forward, any of the bands you talked to reveal strange aspects of their music, visitations, maybe even strange recordings they might have gotten while creating the music?
So this is something I always kind of kick myself in the butt about, but at the time when I was doing I was interviewing these bands, so I was interviewing for the Eastern Chronicle, and so usually those are, I'm writing stories. So obviously each story has an angle. So I really didn't get to ask any of those questions because the story wasn't about that. It was either about the album they were promoting or the tour they were on or whatever. And I've interviewed Tom DeLonge many times. I've met him many times, and I've never talked to him about UFOs, which is always something I always regret. I got a quote from him for my book, about exclusive quote about what To the Stars is doing for the book, but it was basically just a quote I got from him. I needed to have like a full conversation about this with him, which I regret because I've I sat backstage with him before and interviewed him, and I don't know why I never asked about it back then. Probably, like I said, because the story didn't lend to it. But like the very last Warped Tour, I interviewed Jack Grisham from TSOL. And this is about around the time I had my website up and my books. And, TSOL is, they're like an early punk band, but they also have like some they had like a little goth phase too. And I didn't even know this, but going in, Jack Grisham had this crazy story about how his house was haunted. And he was able to, and I didn't even know going in the interview. And I just kind of brought it up, hey, being in a goth band, what inspires you? And he told me his story. So it's pretty cool that, once again, so many people have these experiences, no matter if you're an artist, musician, a doctor, you serve in the military, or just a regular guy like us. People have had, these crazy experiences.
Just so you understand, folks, you don't have to send Tim and I emails. Yes, our guest has somebody in the background talking. It's not a demon or a mermaid singing to us to try to get our attention during the show.
Wait, you got someone in the background?
Yeah.
So my wife's in like 2 rooms far. Do you want me to hear? Let me close the door more.
Oh, that's fine. I know that if I don't address it, we're going to get it. When he was talking, it was like a woman's voice. And Dave, there was a ghost right there. So I'm just making sure that we're addressing it now before I get those emails flying in at us later on. Well, talk to me about the whole aspect of punk rock and UFOs, the concept that you put together with this trilogy of books that you've written.
So people always gravitate towards that because I think it ended up being a pretty good conversational piece. But it's always like, people always ask, well, what do punk rock and UFOs have, in common? And I tell them, it's not so much about the music, it's more about the rebellious attitude, what we believe, what we rebel against. And I mean, cryptozoology, UFOs, these are underdog sciences, so it's kind of that same mentality. And the first book, Cryptozoology Meets Anarchy, Punk Rock and UFOs, kind of digs deeper into this idea of what we choose to believe and what we choose to rebel against. So it's like, for us, we may rebel against conventional beliefs, but these weirder topics, for us, it's normal to us. We don't see the weird part of it.
Well, breaking down each one now, you've done them on different topics. Which one really kind of starts to resonate more with you if you've had a chance to kind of examine it this way?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
The different styles and the topics and the type of anomalous activity that takes place. Which ones really kind of resonate with you more now?
It's weird. As I get older, like when you first start into this stuff, it's like, you want to read about the sightings and, you want to try to see photo evidence and, regarding UFOs. Cryptozoology is a whole nother ballgame. But yeah, when it comes to UFOs, you want to see that. You want that, give me that hard evidence. And as a journalist, you want that too. But, the more you read into this stuff, you see how, it's shifting more to like the kind of, the ideas of consciousness and more of the New Age beliefs, which years ago, people were laughing at that. But now, as I think as we evolve more, we become more open-minded and progressive, we're able to kind of say, hey, you know what, maybe there's something here. And, that's something from the start I was always kind of interested in. Like I put it in my first book, some of the things about life after death, but I really expand on it more in Stranger Than Fiction for sure. Just because I think where ufology's at right now, this is a conversation many are having.
Afterlife systems. I mean, do you believe from the people you've spoken to, and I understand this is just your concept of it, but do you believe that we actually exist past this physical form? Or do you believe that it's an echo, a remnant, something that is not us, but like a fingerprint we've left behind?
If you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said, no, when we're dead, we're dead. But, you kind of grow, you learn, and you're able to kind of, maybe change some of your preconceived notions of things. And from a lot of things I read, I really do believe that there's something else after we die. And I think somehow it's all tied into the same phenomena. Just from everything I read about, UFO abductions and near-death experiences and consciousness, and I kind of put together my own theories and stuff. But I mean, you look at in terms of like ufology, really starting to buy into this stuff, like Leslie Kean, who wrote the New York Times articles, the recent one and the big one, the very from 2017 about the Pentagon UFO program, and she wrote a groundbreaking book about UFOs as well. So her second book is about near-death experiences and life after death. So this is a mainstream journalist putting a reputation on the line to write about this subject in 2019. So I think that's saying something.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
This message brought to you by FEMA. Home fires occur most often in winter. Keep anything that can catch fire at least 3 feet from heating equipment. And never use an oven to heat your home. Stay in the kitchen when frying, grilling, or broiling food. Turn space heaters off when you leave the room or go to bed. Make sure all vents are clear of snow and ice to allow carbon monoxide to vent outside. Have your furnace, heating system, and chimneys serviced each year by a qualified professional. Learn more at www.usfa.fema.gov.
Mike Damante, our guest. We have a link to his website where you can find all of his books. We also have a link to his newest book on today's program, so you can find it easily, reference it. Remember, folks, go rate and review the books once you've had a chance to buy them. That always helps the authors get their presence a little bit bigger on the book sources. So make sure that you take the time to do that, since they're taking the time to share these great insights and phenomenal stories with you. So talking about life after death, you said 10 years ago you believed there was nothing. We're just like a candle. We're gone. What started to change you on that? And is there a few examples that really stand out to you?
It just the interesting thing about this adventure we go on when we study this is, you're kind of putting the pieces together for yourself. That doesn't mean that, what you're putting together is something that will hold truth, in terms of science or fully accurate, but you shape your belief system a little bit. You may change how you believe. And for me, it's like a lot of this stuff makes sense when you piece it together, that the idea that our consciousness is our spirit and our memories live on, and we're able to go to these parts of the universe that we currently can't. And I mean, I look at the abduction phenomena and how people describe it, and how people describe near-death experiences, and how they're very similar. So there's something there, absolutely.
Do you feel that with the experiences that you kind of examine and look into with the afterlife phenomena, is this does the I'm trying to figure out the right way to word this, but does the phenomena itself start to call into question people's belief systems or the reality of what takes place, especially with near-death experiences? Meaning, if you go into it with the preconceived notion that it exists, those are more likely the people that will have experiences like that? Or are you seeing that it really just doesn't matter, the phenomena or the experiences of near death and other strange aspects of ghosts happen to people whether they are believers or not?
I think it happens to people whether they believe or not. I in no way, shape, or form, I'm an expert in near-death experiences. I've written about it in my books, and I've interviewed people who are experts in this. And a lot of them will say the same thing. Like, nothing they're saying is that hey, this is what we're saying, and it's 100% fact. This is just kind of hey, we're putting this out there. You be the judge, and I think that's always the case of a good story. But yeah, I think if anything, that may put people at ease. If they believe this stuff. If they believe that once you die, your consciousness travels on. So I think maybe if someone's old and on their deathbed, maybe they'll be less terrified. I don't know.
Yeah, very well could be. Well, let's, as you're taking it in, you had a chance to kind of write about the, true believers aspect. What really kind of stood out to you from that first book?
True Believers, the second book?
I'm sorry, yeah. From the second book, but from that, that new examination.
So truly, all the books kind of build off each other. Stranger Than Fiction takes the ideas of the other ones and builds on it. And it's in the way where it's like if you read Stranger Than Fiction, you can go back and read the other ones. It's definitely the most complete work I've ever done. It's the best work I've ever done. I'm not just saying that. It's definitely better than the first two. It's not like the first two are bad, but as a writer, you kind of learn, when you write books, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't. Maybe I should have did more here, etc. But with the second book, True Believers, I really wanted to show people, the average person who picked up my book, hey, look, these people who are into UFOs, who study UFOs, who've had experiences, they're just like you. And what we need is people like you, the common populace who's not interested in this stuff, to say, you know what? I need to take interest in learn about this stuff, because at the end of the day, that's how we get a better understanding about the mysteries of the universe. So that was kind of the goal of True Believers. Stranger Than Fiction, the goal is to normalize this idea of paranormal. So when people watch something fictional, they'll understand that it came from something or was potentially influenced by something in the real world too, and that they're not so different after all.
Well, how do we begin to normalize something that there is not one set parameters of definition for?
That's a great question. I think at some point, and I cover this in the book, something changed, right? Because if you go back to kind of what people used to believe in folklore, mythology, and religion, their stories were life as they knew it in some cases, or urban legends were based off something. So even if I go back to the early Sumerian texts, right, those texts were recorded on tablets, and those tablets were very expensive back then and very hard to do. So, they were recording their history. So I don't think they would be recording, fiction on there for no reason. So it's like it kind of goes back to something changed. Obviously, society has changed. We've kind of shifted towards everything's more science-based, and as technological advances have grown, which is a good thing. We've shifted, I guess, our priorities to family, school, work, education, religion. So it's kind of, as the world advanced, I think we've kind of left behind these old beliefs and these old stories. But they live now through pop culture. They live through fiction.
What is and again, with the idea that, it becomes part of popular lexicon and, starts to take on a life of its own, do we lose sight of the spirituality of some of these experiences once that takes place?
Man, that's a great point. I think somewhat, but at the same time also lets them live. Like one of the things I bring up in my book, I look at, I bring up comic books because, grew up a big comic book nerd, and you look at pop culture and you look at these characters and these heroes, and they're all kind of based off ideas or gods or instances that happened in the past. So if you look at like Thor, I always use Thor because it's a really good example. People believe, these Scandinavian countries believe that Thor was a real person, a real god. He existed, and there's still statues to this day in those nations to worship him. And, so like if Thor was real, where is he now? Right. Well, he's in comic books, he's in movies, he's in, he's in video games, like in popular culture. So I don't think the spirituality necessarily dies. I think it just converts with the time.
It starts to supersede the initial intent of the characters, though. But is that kind of what we need in life, is the evolution of an idea and a concept to, I think that's been a big sticking point for people that have trouble with belief in religion, is that it does seem to just be that. It's something that is manipulated and cajoled into whatever the interpreter's version is. But it seems that religion, belief systems, and anything, they have to remain malleable in order to adapt and be utilized. Do you think that there is a part of that folklorist aspect of storytelling that is just as important, just as, without demoting the spirit of these stories and keeping it relevant to the new age?
Absolutely. I think the stories by themselves, I think, stand on their own, for sure. But like I said, you see them then adapted to the new age. So like you see these ideas and these themes that were once belief, the idea of magic and wizards, like, you say that and it sounds, fictional, and it sounds, make believe. But at some point people believe that. And now you see Harry Potter, all these kids believe, like little kids will pick it up or watch the movie, and maybe they think they can do magic one day or something. Or like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the reboot on Netflix. I referenced that in the book too, and it's like, this is a show for like like teenagers, but like they deal with some like legit mythology and occultism and like darker themes in it too. So it's like you're presenting these ideas to a young audience, not to necessarily like influence them, but to, hey, look, these tropes are out there, they exist, and they have since the beginning of time. The
overall arc of these different types of histories, some of them seem to be rooted, and we've talked about it on the show, as cautionary tales, things that, we don't want our kids playing by the water, so there's water beasts. We don't want them playing in the woods, so there's werewolves. We don't want them, crossing through the cemeteries where perhaps, shiftless ne'er-do-wells without homes back in the day. I'm not ripping on homeless people now. I'm just saying back in the day, would have been and may have held you up. So they create these phantom stories. Do you believe, though, that because of the belief systems for so long, that sometimes something starts to imprint and create these tulpa-like effects in these aspects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you write about dragons for centuries, you warn people that, there's dragons beyond the forest, people won't go into the forest. Eventually that may change, that the dragon may change to something else, like goblins, monsters, or whatever, or it may change to wolves, or, whatever the monster is may change, but the idea remains the same. So I think that's applicable to a lot of the stuff that people believe nowadays. And, I'm talking about like more like, folklore, and in cultural connections, as opposed to us. I mean, like I said, we live in America. We don't have some of that rich, cultural backgrounds as some of the European nations and the Asian nations do.
But if the concept of tulpas, this belief that things that you focus on, things that you think about, things that you believe in become kind of, they take on a life of their own, I guess is the best way to say it. Yes. If that's true, then why aren't people seeing Santa all year round, not just in December, if you get my drift? And
that's a great point, but it's like, but we hold, I mean, nowadays we hold these beliefs that most people do as stories. So for them, it's, it's like I said, it's basically, I feel like these legends exist through our popular culture, and they're not something that can be manifested to our reality. That's just kind of how they live nowadays. But it's like, I think you made the good point earlier, like, you don't go into the water because of the lake monster, right? It's kind of like, these same ideas exist throughout time. It's just the delivery of them changes.
We're going to have to take a break up here in a minute or so, but something I find interesting is that, people have talked about aliens, UFOs, strange encounters. There's been some remarkable abduction and encounter cases that have been outlined, and it's pretty hard to just summarily dismiss them, because in some cases it involves many unwilling participants, people that don't want to be associated with the story, people whose lives were ruined by it, and they gained nothing from it, but yet they still stand by those stories. To me, that's pretty compelling. And now we're starting to see a shift. We're seeing something strange happen. I mean, a few days ago, there's this big article about the fact that, some military sources and NASA are saying that, hey, there are some craft that we just cannot identify. On the news site, Fox News site right now, is a big article just came out about 10 hours ago. Pentagon's secret defunct UFO hunting program may still exist. The U.S. government's search for unidentified flying objects is ongoing, a part of a program called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force that operates under the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence, according to recent Senate committee reports. That's a pretty major article on a pretty major website. You also have an article that just came out in the Scientific American. This was just released on July 27th. Headline reads, "Unidentified aerial phenomena, better known as UFOs, deserve scientific investigation." UFOs back in the news because of videos initially leaked and later confirmed by the U.S. Navy and officially released by Pentagon that purportedly show unidentified aerial phenomena in our sky. Speculations about their nature have run the gamut from mundane objects like birds or balloons to visitors from outer space. It's difficult, if not impossible, to say what these actually are, however, without context. That's how this article starts, and it goes into a pretty lengthy discussion about this. And when you have the Scientific America, you've got major networks and news networks looking in and re-examining these cases. What is this telling us regarding the UFO phenomena? Punk Rock and UFOs, Stranger Than Fiction is the book. Mike Damante, our guest. We'll continue this conversation right after this.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. Be the someone who gives their time. Be the someone who lends an ear. Be the someone who takes a step. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN, asking you to join the fight against sexual violence and volunteer in your community. Log on to RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org, to learn how you can be the someone.
This message brought to you by the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network and this station.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
We're back. Mike Damante, our guest. So what do you think about this, Mike, with the major articles coming out, major news sources covering the story and not doing it tongue-in-cheek with the X-Files theme playing behind them? It seems to be getting serious.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen in the past 3 years is we've seen compelling evidence by credible witnesses and sources with backgrounds, professional backgrounds in military. They know exactly what to look for. People from the private sector, people from mainstream sciences that have kind of all collaborated these stories. And we're seeing it through the eye of credible or large mainstream news outlets. So it truly is, I've said this before, this is the kind of the golden age of UFOs, if you're into this stuff, just because of the way it's been taken seriously. And that started, like I said, in 2017 with the New York Times article. And I've interviewed Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kane, who've written that article, and they made a really good point that, what the New York Times does with these articles, a lot of the other outlets kind of piggyback. Like New York, so okay, the Times did it. So then, okay, Washington Post says, okay, you know what? Let's we could cover this too now. Fox News, CNN, all right, we could cover this now too. And that's something you see. Like I have a journalism background, and it's called a mainstream bias. And the word bias doesn't necessarily mean it's bias in the sense where it's slanted, but it's a mainstream bias in the sense where one new big news outlet does something and the other ones kind of follow suit because they're reporting on it. So like if you turn on ABC and they're not covering this, viewers may say like, hey, why are they doing this UFO story? Washington Post did it, NBC did it, Fox did it. Why doesn't ABC have it? So I think it's really great that these articles are coming out and it's forcing other large outlets to do their own versions of it.
Well, I was going to say even Entrepreneur Magazine has an article. It starts off with Senator Mark Rubio, Republican of Florida, believes the truth is out there and he wants to make it public. According to the lawmaker, there are unidentified objects flying over U.S. military bases that the government cannot explain. It's unfortunate it's coming from a Florida man because he's proven on our true crime shows they're crazy and I don't know what we can trust. But it's striking to me how this is taking place. Now, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there who are saying, isn't it interesting that in the height of economic doom and gloom, a worldwide pandemic taking place, a political change here in the United States big things going on, that all of a sudden now we're going to start to open up about the UFO realm? It seems like a deflection or a distraction that suddenly this element is going to open up just in the same time that NASA's firing off a new rover to Mars to look for ancient life. So it just seems like all of a sudden our world got even smaller with the possibilities that all these networks and newspapers and online news sources and everything is starting to propagate. What do you think regarding the concept of the conspiratorial angle, that this seems more like a deflection as opposed to finally just a time of admission?
I don't buy into that because I think so many of the stuff that we research is considered fringe. So I think when you play into the conspiracy theory angles of it, I think it does more harm than good. I will say this though. So when the Pentagon came out and said, hey, you know what, these videos that came out in 2017 that To the Stars Academy put out and that the Navy confirmed are real, yes, they did come from us. They actually said, yes, these are our videos. And they did that on like a day, I forgot the day it was, but it was like right when the COVID stuff was really like heating up. And they were expecting, so Susan Gao, who the Pentagon spokesperson is, she's a very interesting person in the UFO field because I feel like a lot of people believe she's been playing a lot of the, pulling a lot of the strings with this stuff. I think she says multiple times she's refused to comment or confirm Luis Elizondo's work with the Pentagon, and she's kind of been playing around with us about this. But it's fascinating because her background has a lot of strategic planning for stuff like this. She has a background in PSYOPs, which is psychological operations, and kind of planning to kind of how they spread information. So I think, the Pentagon released this thinking that it was going to be buried, right? But it ended up becoming one of the biggest news stories of the day when that story hit. So it kind of backfired in their face. So I thought they say, people are preoccupied with COVID and the world burning down. They're not going to, pay attention to the story. But that story definitely was one of the highest click stories of the day for most.
Because the world was looking for something different. We were tired of COVID, and the end of the world as we know it. However, if you're going to watch the conspiratorial aspect of this, I told my wife, I said, here's what worries me. Suddenly they capture this pretty impressive, weird photograph, which could be one of the best pieces of proof regarding Loch Ness. The government's starting to come forward about aliens and UFOs. If mainstream science suddenly starts to say, hey, we do exist past our physical form, I think that means we're screwed as a planet and an asteroid's about to hammer us because they're finally just telling us everything. All right, what have we got to lose at this point? Yes, and Bigfoot turns out to be Jesus, and he's back, folks. I'm just kind of waiting for that angle on it. It's very strange to me. And maybe it shouldn't be, like we just touched on, that so many weird things are happening and people are glomming to it because they're tired of the doom and gloom of the rest of the world. Let's take these leaps into the fantastic, and that ties in with pop culture very well. I was surprised to learn that horror movies of the 30s really kind of hit their apex during the Great Depression and during economic strife and wartime, because people wanted a distraction. And these horrors were more terrifying than what was going on in the world. So it was kind of a release valve. And UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, this is kind of that same, I wonder if it's that same porting for people.
No, that's a great point. And I think that kind of going back to what my book strives for is to kind of normalize the paranormal and the weird. And we're kind of slowly seeing that. Like you said, I didn't even think about that Loch Ness Monster photo you just referenced. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I didn't even think about the timing of it, because that's a great photo. It's one of the best photos we have potentially of Loch Ness Monster. I didn't even think about that. But it's like, here all these things are coming out, right? They're coming out now. But it's also like, the more people read about it, the more these become normal to them, to the mainstream public. So it's like, in my book, I talk about how the work of print journalists helping to mainstream this, it trickles down. You kind of see them with the TV production programs, A&E, History, CW, all of them. They kind of say, okay, well, these mainstream journalists are starting to take this seriously. Then let's make our shows follow suit. Because for years, we've seen these goofy shows where people are hunting ghosts, they never find anything, and it's all like about jump scares. But we're starting to see some legitimate research shows now. And I've interviewed for the book, I think about 4 or 5 different producers who work in Hollywood who produce these shows, as well as some independent filmmakers as well, and how they approach them. So I think we're starting to see, television studios follow suit and definitely are approaching their shows in a more serious manner because of the work of some of these news outlets to legitimize these stories.
All right. Now, in the examination for the new book, what are some of the other elements that you thought would, since we've got the ear of, the world, we've got listeners from all around the world checking this out. What are some of the other elements that really kind of jumped to you that you thought, this is something intriguing? This is something a little different than what I've seen or heard before?
In my book that I wrote about?
Yeah.
So for me, the chapter on, I think it's called Pop Mythology. I think it's that chapter. I really wanted to show the parallels between some of our heroes in comic books, pop culture, etc., in real life. And one of the things I like to bring up is kind of Superman. And, the idea of how Superman is portrayed in the recent DC EU movies, especially Zack Snyder's portrayal in Man of Steel and Justice League. And Zack Snyder has the Snyder Cut coming out, so we're going to see that full vision. And, like I said, those films were, bashed by the critics. They were darker toned because it was the opposite of what Marvel was doing. And I think now people are coming around saying, oh, okay, Marvel, those films set the standard for what, box office and studios expected from superhero films, that create these big universes, and DC did something differently, and they were kind of blasted at first. But the ideas in there were, I think, very important that they presented. If Superman existed, if an alien or a god existed amongst us today, how would we view them? We wouldn't welcome them with open arms. We welcome them probably with nuclear weapons and asking them, what are your intentions? Would Superman act unilaterally? Would he be political? Would he serve America? Would he serve other governments? Would he be co-opted by terrorism? And I really thought that idea that played out in those films was very important to explore. And I was able to do that in the book too. And I was able to interview some of the creators for DC Comics and some authors as well, to just kind of some comic book experts and Superman historians, just kind of bring all this together. And I mean, there's definitely parallels between that and mythology, religion, pop culture, even alien abduction stories. Like I bring up Christopher Bledsoe. He's this famous UFO experiencer, and he's drawn the aliens that he's seen. And it's interesting to me that one of them has a triangle on their chest, which you see show up through so many different paranormal lore. The idea of a triangle, you see it in masonry, you see it in other UFO stories, you see it in mythology, you see this in Egyptian mythology and folklore. So I was thinking about it. So Superman has an upside down. He basically has an upside down triangle on his chest, right, with the S standing for hope, right? And I looked at that triangle as like you could almost think of it as the Trinity, right? And you think in the Trinity, you have the Holy Spirit, the man, and the what's the other part? I'm bad. I'm not religious, so everything I study.
There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
There you go. And
right.
Compare that to DC Comics, you have the Trinity, which is Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. So you basically have man, God, and alien or son of God. So you have these ideas cross-culturally connect, through pop culture and through other things too. So it's I think that was really fascinating to explore because the book's called Stranger Than Fiction. So I want somebody to pick it up, and even if you're not into UFOs or paranormal, you read this and you say, "Wow, you know what? Maybe there's something here." I like Spider-Man. The idea that somebody can get bit by a radioactive spider and potentially get some powers from it. Maybe could happen. Or they read about Aquaman and they say, "You know what? I'm going to read about marine biology." And then you read about these creatures in the ocean who have superpowers, things that we can't do. So it's like, are these ideas that we see play out in fiction, are they really that weird?
One aspect of this is we were kind of talking about, were they hoping to bury the lead with the UFO stuff, or were they trying to make it, was it a calculated plan? Because of the timing of what was going on, right? I mean, you had the famous summit between Reagan and Gorbachev, right? Mm-hmm. Who, they agreed to pause the Cold War in case of an alien invasion, right? Because their whole concept was, right, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Suddenly, what would bring the world together would be something like Independence Day, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Suddenly, no longer Israelis and Palestinians. We're no longer Americans and Russians. We're no longer, Europeans or Canadians. We become the world. When 9/11 happened, everybody was an American, right? I mean, countries around the world bowed their head and shed tears with us because of what happened here. And for that brief moment, there was unity. In these moments where things seem out of control, it is interesting to me that these timed releases are coming. And is it to start to get us to focus on something? And I don't mean this conspiratorial, but to get us to focus on something else. Because again, if it makes you wonder, with all the work that the government has done on psychic phenomena and anomalous phenomena, that if they've got a world terrified, is that helping to perpetuate this negative bubble of just, this kind of, pardon my French, shitstorm that seems to be taking place on the planet?
Yeah, and that's something where a lot of people gravitate towards this idea of a threat. A lot of people believe that, the government and some of the officials to the Stars Academy are pushing this threat narrative. When they say threat, they don't mean threat like UFOs are going to come down and destroy us. The idea, if you look at it from a military background, if there's something in our skies that we can't control, it's potentially a threat. That doesn't mean it's harmful, right? But it's a threat to sovereign nations. It's a threat to borders. It's a threat to rules. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a physical impending doom threat. So I think there's a big disconnect there with some of the messaging that Lou Elizondo, some of the people that To the Stars say, and some of how people perceive that messaging. I really don't think they're pushing that narrative where, the gloom and doom, it's a threat, they're going to come kill us. I don't foresee that at all. They're looking at it through a strictly strategic point of view.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the gloom and doom of everything else that's taking place on our planet, is this a good time to start sifting in things like the belief that, aliens are among us, because it helps distract us from the rest of the gloom and doom of the world, meaning that it something to start bringing people together, that if we, not necessarily in the fear, but, the world would be fascinated if something like this happened. If suddenly we had proof of the Loch Ness Monster, I'm telling you, I think the world would stop and take notice for a couple of days, and it would give that psychological respite to what else is going on here.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is not necessarily a like momentarily distraction from everything, the shitstorm that's going on. But I almost look at it as an opportunity for people to understand that, there's mysteries out there that are kind of greater than ourselves, and that can inspire us to kind of read more and see that what's humanly possible. And that could, maybe push us to find a cure for some of these things, or see what we can do, something greater than ourselves. And I think that's a positive aspect of this. If you read up on this and you find out that there's multiple organizations that are studying this, are coming up with groundbreaking technology to study it and collect data and apply it. And if people read that, they'll realize that just because you don't hear about it every day on the news, or these companies aren't publicly traded, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. They're out there, and they're coming up. There's a ton of them as we speak that are new, that are working on different things that could, besides the UFO phenomenon, that could help us in general, just kind of grow as humanity and as well. So I think that's a fascinating aspect too. It's like, yeah, you can look at this as a distraction for everything that's going on, but you can also look at it as kind of a empowering thing, or hope for the future. Hey, look, if we, once we get through this, we have all these great minds and with all these resources that are working to kind of better our humanity.
I'm all for it. Fascinating stuff. Do you think that we are within 5 to 10 years of a major discovery, or I hate to keep using the word disclosure, or something that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not alone and that there is something bigger than humans on planet Earth?
I mean, it's such a tough question because some people believe that disclosure already happened. When To the Stars got the Pentagon to admit that those videos were real, that was disclosure, and that's what we're going to get for now. Which, in a way, you think about it, yeah, that's kind of a win. It's not aliens landing on the White House lawn on live television, coming out, communicating with us. But in a way, having the Pentagon admit that UFOs are real and they've been studied is disclosure in one sense, right? But I also look at it in another way. It's like there's still so much more to come in terms of what we can learn and what can be given to us. And I think the fact that you have Marco Rubio, who I think is, I'm not a fan of him, but I mean, he is a big name in Washington, co-signing this bill. And you have Harry Reid, who was the architect of the ATIP program. You have these big name people in governments speaking openly about this, because for years, we kind of known that, these people exist. These special access programs, certain people in the government have been read in, on these things for sure. But now it's being brought to the light of the public. So I think that's a great first step, in disclosure for some. But I really think, there's, with so many new scientific endeavors and companies coming out and all the research they're doing and stuff that they plan to do, I think it's only a matter of time before we just keep learning more and more about the phenomena and more about ourselves too.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see, and like you said, I do believe that was a form of disclosure, but it's not what the world wants, right? Okay, the Pentagon said that, but they skate that line of, we're not saying it's alien, we're just saying it's our footage, and we can't specifically identify what's in it.
Absolutely.
Right? There's that plausible deniability.
Yeah, and you also have people who deny reality as it is. So it's like the Pentagon come out with the truth about UFOs, and you'll have a large sect of people who won't believe it. You have the people who just, you look happening nowadays. You have people running around in the streets not wearing masks, spitting in cops' face, saying COVID's a hoax, when we all know that's not the case. So it's like there'll definitely be a large fringe of nuts who won't believe it, UFO truth one day for sure. So it's like, we have people, we got to the point of society where intellectualism and science is just kind of looked down upon now. So it's like, it's crazy to see, if people will, do these reckless things and believe these crazy theories and just go out there and have no disregard for themselves or others. Can you imagine what they will do with a potential story about UFOs being real?
It's cool. What do you make of pop culture overall and its effect and impact on the social status of these different paranormal aspects. I mean, obviously, we've watched over the last 15 years, every network has had some kind of paranormal show. Even the Animal Planet had what was Haunted, I think.
Yeah.
You had Ghost Whisperer, Medium, Supernatural, Roswell, 2 iterations of Roswell. Sabrina made the comeback. Mm-hmm. You've got Ghost Hunters, Ghost Nation, The Return of Ghost Hunters, Paranormal State, Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Challenge, the Holzer Files, and it just every year continues to go on. Tim and I, my co-host and I have been joking, when is this bubble going to pop? But the bubble just keeps to continually expand. And it has become all encompassing to the point where it's not just ghost. There have been multiple Bigfoot shows, UFO shows, ancient alien shows, a different examination of history. Are we at a point where you think that the powers to be are starting to realize that this interest is not just crazy bored people, but there's enough to continue to examine this, or are they looking at more at it as exploitative?
I mean, I think, you're talking about earlier how kind of pop culture views this, and it's like, kids love Stranger Things, and I'm a teacher, and I tell students, hey, Montauk is a real place. Like, the real experiments happen there. Like, this is influenced by that. So it's like, you look at that, and it's like, Hollywood's already been borrowing off these ideas for years. They never really stopped doing it. But like you said, we're seeing this bubble of shows that it's more acceptable. And, I've interviewed many executives for my book, and I've been interviewed to be on these shows as well. So like, I know how the process works for sure. But like, to them, they don't necessarily always just see it as like, oh, this is this weird fringe thing, people are going to love it. I think they're starting to see it as a viable franchise in the sense where, Bigfoot, these Bigfoot shows, have their fan base, these UFO shows have their fan base, et cetera. So it's almost like, like how pop culture has their own franchises and universes. They're kind of building it with these shows. And, I look at how it's just also, years ago, I would say maybe 5-10 years ago, some of the more DIY productions, I don't think they would have got any attention. But now you look at it, you look at what the guys in Small Town Monsters do, like they've been killing it. Like, they're producing so much quality content, and like Hollywood's taking notice. And you look at Hellier, like how well that is done. Like, to me, it's like, those shows can do well on such a DIY, smaller scale. And I think you're starting to see some of the bigger networks take notice about these smaller shows, and they're starting to say, oh, well, this is how they're investigating it. They're taking this seriously. And I think a lot of the newer shows are starting to follow suit. Unidentified on History Channel, I think, has done a fantastic job of bringing new credible witnesses to light to new audiences, because it's not just UFO people watching it. It's people who maybe seen the Tic Tac video or read the New York Times story, and now they're learning more. So it's almost like you used the analogy earlier of a bubble, but I think about it as like a snowball or like a tidal wave. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's reflective too. I mean, these paranormal research shows, they're also reflective of what's popular in pop culture at the same time, for sure. You're kind of, again, normalizing it, putting it out there for people to re-examine, which is great, because then, again, if we can come together as a collective, as opposed to it being kind of an embarrassment, which it was for many years, right? It's always that kind of thing you talk about in hushed tones of, oh, ghosts, yeah, that's so silly. Hey, last night something really weird happened to me, right? This normalization. Do you think that when people start to accept this more as a reality as opposed to fantasy, it could open a paranormal Pandora's box? And I don't mean just psychologically. I mean, could the acknowledgement of these things and their existence, can that be enough to bridge and make this even more powerful than it seems to be? I mean, yeah, I think that's like, it's a really good idea that the power of belief could potentially lead to more discoveries. You get enough people believing in something, and you see this idea in pop culture too. Like, we were talking about horror movies earlier, like in Freddy vs. Jason, right? The idea that Freddy is dead because people stop believing in him. So Freddy brings back Jason to start killing people, and they think it's Freddy. So then Freddy gains his power and exists again, right? So you kind of see that idea in pop culture. But then I also think about like what the guys in Hellier did when they were discovering that everything was leading to this idea of Pan, which is this mythological god of the earth. And at one point they try to raise Pan. So it's like, there's this theory that was Pan all along trying to get people to believe in him again. Like, would that help save the earth from all the climate crisis? Like, I mean, these sound like science fiction plot lines, but there could be some reality to them.
Well, it kind of brings to mind something, and I don't think we've mentioned it on the show for a while, but it's been something that's tickled at the back of my brain. You think of Seth Shostak, right? And Seth Shostak is listening, right? Pointing those giant microphones, if you will, those radio telescopes out, waiting, listening, hoping for a response. And in the paranormal, there are people that were investigating ghosts around the world that were getting this really weird phenomena where the name Seth was being called out constantly in different places. Now, is that the fabled Seth that was channeled? And gosh, her name is evading me right now. I can't think of it. Or is Seth Shostak listening in the wrong direction? Is the message coming from here? Is there something trying to reach, to give that answer? Like I said, just throwing out the concepts of these things, that's part of what excites me and electrifies me in continuing to research this field, is because, it seems like, to me, that's like, you're always trying to date the blonde when the brunette's tapping you gently on the shoulder and she's pretty amazing, right? He's looking to space for the answers and something's calling out to Seth all around the planet at different intervals and different places. What does that mean in reality? But if we're so hyper focused on one aspect as opposed to looking at the phenomena of the supernatural as all encompassing, as normal, what are we missing in the grander scheme of things?
Well, I think first we need to kind of break that stigma that the paranormal and supernatural is something that's fringe or pseudoscience. The scientists for NIDS who went to Skinwalker Ranch and they try to conduct experiments and they try to control scientifically the variables. They couldn't. So traditional science does not work for the paranormal or for UFOs. It's just fact. It doesn't. So once you accept that and realize, hey, we need to look into some other places, then I think that's when we start getting progress. And I think we're starting to see that. There's a reason why the CIA, investigated people who claim to have telekinesis and other psychic abilities, because there's something there for sure. And I look at it as, so many of these signs point to us, right? One of the, a couple years ago when the book American Cosmic came out, one of the points that they made was our DNA is the transmitter. We transmit these messages through ourselves. So instead of waiting by a machine sending out signals for UFOs and aliens, you're doing it wrong. We are the transmitter. It's inside us. We already know that there's so much of our DNA and our potential that we don't currently use. How do we accelerate that? How do we turn that on to learn more about ourselves and what we're capable of as humans? Because there's more to it than what we know right now. Just how do we do that? We don't know. So I think that's where you start for sure. I think you kind of have to give some credibility to the supernatural and paranormal and say, maybe this isn't so weird. And let's give this a chance because these traditional studies haven't been working. These traditional methods haven't been working.
I know our time is fleeting here. What experiences have really kind of impacted you in your research, and has it opened doors to you having more strange things kind of come to light?
It's weird. I mean, you just find yourself looking for things more. I think you're more open-minded to these possibilities. None of my sightings were anything that were super abnormal in terms of like UFOs, right? I've seen multiple orbs throughout my life. And so to me, the high strangeness aspect of it, because it's such a common sighting, I don't know. But for me, I think it touched me in a different way because It definitely opens up your worldview about everything. And once you're open-minded to those possibilities, I mean, anything's possible. And I think that's also inspiring too for ourselves. If we think anything's possible, if we set our mind to it, I think that's kind of what we need right now. We need a lot of people saying, you know what, forget what they said. It's not possible. I'm going to make this change, or I'm going to do these things which I probably shouldn't be doing. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to challenge all these aspects of humanity. And I think that's something that anyone who's into this topic, I think you kind of feel empowering when you read about this stuff, or you talk about it with like-minded people, or you talk about it with strangers. You're giving. I feel like when we talk about this stuff to people, our friends who aren't into it, you're kind of giving them a gift. And that's the idea. You want people to have a spark and then read about this themselves and learn. And I mean, what it's really going to take is just more people being interested in these topics, and that was basically the goal of these books all along. Even if I reach, if 1,000 people ever read my books, I think that's better than no people reading it. Obviously, I don't have these outlets that some other people have to kind of push out these messages, but I think everyone does their part. You do your part, authors do their part, radio podcast hosts do their part. You have mainstream journalists who cover this; they do their part. You have TV networks who give airtime to these shows. Like everyone does their part. So I think in the long run, if the end game is more people reading about these topics and being more open-minded, then I think that's a win.
I agree. That's, I think, why we're going on 15 years on the air, right? Whether we're hitting an episode that 500 people hear or 500,000 hear, you're exposing somebody to these concepts and giving, direction for somebody that's hungry for this information, something else to examine and realize that it's normal. Tim and I, people have asked us, isn't there aspects of what you do where you're just rolling your eyes at the guest? And I'd say, sure, we're human. But then sometimes those are the ones that, Tim and I are rolling our eyes thinking, oh, my God. And I'll be honest, there was one story, these frog creatures people were encountering in their house. They were like 4-foot tall frog creatures that would be kind of sitting sentinel outside of their bedrooms as children. And if they tried to get out of bed or approach them, they would kind of growl at them or yell at them, get back in bed, or get back, or get away. And, it's a weird deal. And the first couple of times I heard it, Tim and I were rolling our eyes. We're like, uh-huh. And then I started getting emails from people saying, I'm so glad that you talked to that person or that you shared their story, because I thought I was going insane. I was even depressed or, considering suicide, that I was losing my mind because I've seen that creature. And you don't know how sharing these things might impact somebody else and open their eyes to the possibilities that exist out there. And that's great that people like you are doing this. But do you think that, when one of the biggest mouthpieces is a musician, right, Tom DeLonge, and he's out there propagating this and to the Stars Academy, is it because he's not, Neil deGrasse Tyson? He's not Seth Shostak. He's not Michio Kaku coming out and saying this, that the people just aren't taking it quite as seriously as they should at this point?
Well, I think initially that was the case. People, Tom DeLonge is crazy. Oh, he believes in aliens, and he's leaving, Blink to do this. And it's like, he's been doing this stuff forever. This isn't new. But I think that since the years have passed, since he's kind of announced all this, he's really taken kind of more of a back seat. He's more doing stuff behind the scenes and dealing with the entertainment aspects of To the Stars and kind of, helping get the show off the ground. And that was his plan from the start. People listened to him. He never wanted to be the guy.
The poster child, right?
The poster child, for sure. He just used his influence and his resources and his celebrity to kind of get his foot in the door. Right now, Luis Elizondo is the guy who's basically getting the mainstream attention. I mean, he's the one who's been the lead on the season 2 of Unidentified, for sure, because of his background in the Pentagon. So this was part of Tom's plan all along, this stuff he's been saying, and people for years have been discrediting him. But I mean, one thing, he's always been very ambitious, and he's always, shot high, for sure. But yeah, this is something where, you're seeing it now. Everything he said was going to happen is slowly coming into fruition. And these things take time. And To the Stars is a very, very small company, even though they have very big people working for them. So I think people are talking less about Tom DeLonge now and talking more about the Pentagon and the Pentagon officials associated with ATIP. And they're talking about Harry Reid and Lou Elizondo and all these witnesses. So I think definitely that's a good thing. But to kind of go back to something you mentioned earlier, real quick, it's people coming forward and with these experiences, whether it's UFOs or something weird, and it's very important because, like, you brought up that example of like the toad creatures, right? So the person who was maybe afraid to tell that story, now they have confirmation that, look, I'm not crazy. Someone else has had the same experience, and you sometimes you never expect people who would have these experiences would have them. Like, when I was doing that seminar with my teachers, a coworker of mine, she's great. I would never in a million years think she would believe in anything like this. And I referenced like goblins. And she said when she was a kid, she would, in her farm, her grandparents' farm, she would see at night things that looked like leprechauns. And she didn't want to tell anybody because she thought her brothers and sisters would make fun of her. And one day she brought it up and they said they saw it too. So it's like everyone has these crazy sightings. So is everybody crazy? No. There's some truth to some of these sightings for sure. And I think it's great that we're having people with influence and power really pushing to kind of normalize this for everyone.
I agree. Exciting stuff. Great times, man. I really hope that this book does great for you. And again, folks, pick up the books. Read them and make sure to rate and review them, share them, get the word out so that authors like this are inspired to continue looking at it with journalistic aspects and raising the awareness, I think, is going to help create a world where we'll all be able to explore this together. And it won't just be tuning into Darkness Radio to hear the strange offerings from, some guy out in the woods drinking moonshine out of the back of his pickup truck thinking he saw a UFO or a leprechaun. Instead, you're getting people who have passions for writing, examining, researching, and are coming at it with a journalistic turn to make this more accessible to us all. So please do us that favor, rate and review all of the authors that you hear on the show. It goes a long way to help all of them, and we'll continue great content that they'll be able to continue to release and get out there. Before we head off, is there anything else you really want people to kind of take away from the books? Anything or a story in particular you'd like to point out before we say goodbye?
So with Stranger Than Fiction, I really hope people get the book and read it, because I really wanted to pull from a diverse palette of people I interviewed. And as a journalist, you always want to show different sides of the story. So I got quotes from Tom DeLonge, someone from pop culture, Peter Lavenda, an occultist and an author who's written books on the subject, Jeffrey Kripal, professor of religious studies. I was able to also get quotes from various folklorists and scientists and doctors and witnesses. And I really wanted to pull, from different avenues, Hollywood producers, TV producers, mainstream journalists I interviewed, as well as people who are the content creators from Marvel, DC, some of these big media properties. So I really wanted it to come together as a cohesive piece to kind of show that, hey, look, these paranormal, these supernatural ideas aren't so strange. And I hope I accomplished that. And that's what I hope somebody gets out of that, is that they read the book and then maybe they're watching Star Wars or Marvel and they rethink something, say, oh, you know what? I think I read about something before, a sighting that was similar to that. Or, I'm watching Star Wars and you know what? Chewbacca kind of looks like Bigfoot to me. And then they read up and they see in the Bible that the Bible references gigantic, hairy, mythical creatures as well. So, that's the goal of the book for sure. And once again, I just want to kind of end it on, thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think your message is great, with encouraging people to kind of support all us authors and writing reviews. And I hope everyone does the same when your book comes out too. I for sure will be checking it out. So thank you again for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
It's been our pleasure. Punk rock and UFOs, Stranger Than Fiction. Mike Damante, our guest. Remember, there's a link to his books on today's program and his website, so you can find them easily. We'd love to hear from you folks. Again, what other topics would you like us to continue to examine? Is something new popping up? Do you have the frogman in your life or other aspects that maybe we haven't even been aware of yet? Make sure that you email us, Dave@darknessradio.com. And if you know of authors or experiencers that are willing to come forward and share those stories, then make sure that you connect us with them as well. That's it for this week. Be safe, be kind, love one another. We'll see you again next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave. That's Tim. This is Darkness Radio.